Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Masculine Mastery. I'm your host, Dr. Asif. It's the show where we talk about things that matter to men. And today we've got a very special guest, the Fazil Muhammad, aka Coach Taf, a faith-inspired relationship and life coach, working mainly with men, but also works with his wife as well as one half of T for Two. He's had an interesting journey, so I thought I'd get him on the podcast today. We've had similar life experiences, and he's been on one hell of a journey, and we will unpick some of that and some of the tips and take-home messages that he's got for our listeners. So, Taf, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asif. Assalamu alaikum for inviting me onto this show.
Really, it's been a pleasure. And how you been? How's COVID? How's 2022?
2022, to be honest with you, COVID was, I'm an introvert, so COVID for me was fine. I was just doing my own thing. I was in this room. This room looks a lot better than it used to be, so I had lots of time to spend in here to kind of do it up and make it the way I wanted. My wife was here as well, and we were both creating that safe haven and environment that we really wanted to have. And I think post-COVID, it's been interesting. It's been exciting. I think it's great to get back into life outside of the home and connect back with people again, mashallah, in a different way.
Right, okay, no, of course. And so I'm assuming even before COVID, because I looked at your profile, your digital CV, so to speak, you started T for Two in 2018, right?
Correct, yes.
So that was before COVID. So were you doing digital consultations way before COVID?
Well, I used to do a lot of face-to-face training. So before COVID actually was a face-to-face in different settings. So I would facilitate small workshops, day workshops and stuff. And I've been doing that for a number of years, 6-7 years, in fact. So T for Two, I mean, my wife and I are founders of T for Two. And for those who don't know T for Two, it's all around relationships. So we help Muslims create, cultivate and celebrate love. And we're also the co-founders of a community on Facebook, which is called Muslim Love and Marriage. So I guess the facilitation I did in face-to-face was a really great segue into online facilitation. It wasn't difficult for us to kind of pivot.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So COVID happened, and then what do you see in terms of, I'll go into your background in a second, but I'm always keen to actually hear the impact of COVID, because for me personally, it had a massive impact. I was working on the front line, I was burnt out, gyms were closed, I literally had no breaks, I had to work back to back, and it devastating impact on many doctors, and that led to my own burnout, and that led to me starting my own coaching business to help doctors and professionals recover from anxiety and burnout. So for me, mentally, psychologically, it had a huge impact. What impact did it have on yourself and your workload throughout the pandemic?
Yes. Well, I've listened to some of your story, Dr. Asif, and I find it very interesting. And also lots of it resonates with my own journey in terms of serving other people. And I think you have to have either an experience that really is out there, right? That makes you think about yourself, your life, your purpose. And then you have this transition into something else. And I always say it's the version 2.0 of you, right? It's like you recreated yourself. Or what happens is you succumb to your environment, you succumb to whatever you're facing, and you kind of not necessarily implode, but you go inward. And for some people that becomes difficult to climb back out of, if I can use that example. So for me, on a personal level, I think it gave me the opportunity to build a very strong foundation for myself. And what I mean is, whilst I was doing the business on the side, this old adage that talks about, you work hard, right? And you go get, right? And you will achieve something, right? And we were brought up like this, do your academic, do your education, work really hard. You'll get something in the end, and eventually you will become someone, right? You'll become the chief exec, you'll become a doctor, you'll become an engineer or whatever. But I reversed that because I watched lots of different things and realized actually this whole field of personal development is the other way around. It's become become yourself. So
Yeah,
go back
yeah,
into yourself and learn about who you really are intrinsically,
yeah.
your core values and your beliefs. And
Mm-hmm.
then from when you discover who you are, when you become, you do the things that serve you.
Mm-hmm.
When you do the things that serve you, you get what you actually need.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Right.
flipped everything on its head. So you've got to become to get what you need in the end.
That's very interesting because that goes into the Maslow's hierarchy of self-actualization.
Yes.
You need to know who you are at the core. What are your deeply embedded values?
Mhm.
And even in Islam, Prophet
Yes.
Muhammad, peace be upon him, would go before he became a prophet. He would go
Yes.
and meditate for days. Not, we're not talking about hours. He'd go to meditate for days and days and days.
Yes.
So literally, and they say prophethood wasn't revealed to anyone below the age of 40 because you're
Yes.
still finding yourself. Once you find yourself at that kind of formative, where your physical health meets your intellectual health and wisdom at 40, then
Yes.
you find yourself and then you go on your life's calling.
Yeah.
So that's
Yes.
really interesting and stuff because it really touches home on some of the stuff I do around mindset coaching as well,
Right.
i.e., uncovering, peeling
Yes.
off the onion of self
Correct.
and
Yes.
really kind of finding your inner calling, your inner child. Lewis House talks about it in his School of Greatness,
Hmm.
like parenting your inner child. And I know
Yes.
reading from some of your posts and even some of your interviews on YouTube, you've
Yes.
talked about the traumatic childhood you had, you having to go across continents, having to shift from a nuclear family to a single parent family, back to a single parent family in new country as well, having to relearn the language. So can you
Yes.
tell me then, when you went through your therapy, I'm assuming
Yes.
in your 40s and 50s, what did you learn about the young Taf, age
Wow.
8, age 9, struggling to come to terms with his parental, not alienation, but because this is, let's not forget, the days before WhatsApp video calls and FaceTime. So
Where
when
was
you were
it?
away, you were away.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
how
Well,
did you, what did you learn about yourself during therapy, during your own introspective sessions?
that's a brilliant question. So let me set the scene. So the first thing I remember about Pakistan. So my backstory is my parents get divorced. Myself, I'm 8. My youngest siblings, 2 sisters, were 7 and 5 respectively. And what we're asked to do is we're asked to go to Pakistan. Well, I say sent. We were sent to Pakistan with a local villager. And my first memory of Pakistan is, like when you have something in the oven and you open the door and you get this
You know what I
really,
mean?
yeah, it
Yeah.
just hits you. I just remember
Yeah.
that vividly. Yeah.
You must have gone in the summer holidays then. That was put in the July time. Yeah, I've been a few times, and that's why I
I,
developed some kind of animosity towards it because we always used to get sent in July. Like it was our summer holiday break. Pakistan, yeah, yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And I remember the journey on this minibus for about 4 hours. And we went to a very remote village, which was like, there were about 3 or 4 houses for miles. So you think of that in context of you go from the city of Leeds, right? Full of people, family, your environment, your home environment, and you end up in a remote place. But the added, I think, challenge was this: that where we went, we didn't know we were going. Number two, where we went, we didn't even see the people before we even met them.
Mm.
So when I've delivered this as a session to social workers and carers, I said, look, I was referred with I was in a foster home without
Yeah,
the referral process.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
there were no checks and no balances, and we end up in this home, and we just for the next 2 years, I'm trying to work out, who I am, what I'm doing here, and where are my parents. Now, unbeknown to me, Asif, is that for 40 years, so I'm in my 50s now, but for 40 years, I had no idea how that impacted me in a way that in a child was still holding some of that trauma, even though he was an adult.
Yeah.
And the work that I did with a coach for 8 months was solid work. And I remember being asked to journal, to reflect, to look at what I was feeling, why I was feeling it. And I remember sometimes on the video call, sometimes, tearing up. When I said journal, it was heavy.
Yeah.
Sometimes I was asked to kind of leave it if I wasn't, strong enough emotionally. But what it taught me was this: in the end, my inner child was a
Yeah.
neglected child.
Mm-hmm.
And so how that showed up in my life was that in my marriage, anytime I was told something wasn't right, and it wasn't right, there was it could have been something trivial. I felt as though I was going to be neglected again. And I have no
Yeah.
idea that my body's holding those emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and I'm feeling this tension inside of me, and I get scared, and then what I do is I shut down completely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Your body goes into flight and fright, flight and fight and flight mode. But also, we've got a third one, haven't we? There's four: flight, fight, freeze, and fawn. And you might have heard of the fawn response we have later on in life.
Mhm.
But that's interesting. So,
Yes,
in relationships, then, suppose you're in your first marriage. What
yes,
kind of symptoms do you think were displayed, which were emanating from this
yeah.
very profound childhood trauma? Tough.
So it actually was established for me intellectually at a level when I started to study relationships, and
Mm-hmm.
it's down to communication styles. So I was very passive aggressive. So I'd be very passive, but I'd hold a grudge. And perhaps I was not addressing the issue in a way that I would be assertive. So I wouldn't be assertive at all. So I'd kind of withdraw. I'm already an introvert. So what would happen is if there was an issue that I didn't really agree with, I would hold that within me. And the backstory again is that I feel as though if I spoke up, I'd get abandoned again. But I have no idea why I'm keeping quiet. I have no idea why I can't get the strength and the courage to be able to speak out. So it manifested itself that unhealthily, because if you don't articulate what you're feeling, how is the other person going to know you're feeling that way?
Exactly.
And and I always say that anything suppressed, right, will show up somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, of course, it cascades. It never, the butterfly effect. Something here will cause an end effect
Yes,
there, and
correct.
bottling emotions up is only a pressure cooker,
Yes,
and it causes a lot of resentment to your partner, and he or she then will not know why they're being resented. But it's your
absolutely.
inner child which hasn't been healed.
Yes,
So
yeah,
that 8, 9 months of coaching, Taff,
yes,
so it picked up on neglect,
yes,
alienation, perhaps,
yes.
um, uh, you know,
Abandonment as well.
your abandonment. Yeah, so your kind of hypersensitivity to disappointing other people by
Yes,
what you said, so you held it back, and the
yes,
other person had to second guess. Therefore, it led to the big pillar. We call it clarity of communication. That big pillar in relationships just faltered because there was no clarity of communication at all. Your communication was internal. You
yes,
expected your partner to pick up these cues.
yes,
Obviously, she,
yeah.
didn't know your inner child. So when you went through that, how did you feel about childhood? Was it resentment? Was it anger? Or was it guilt? Was it shame? What did you feel towards your parents and your siblings at the time?
You mean at the time when I was younger?
No, no. I mean, when you went through this therapy
Oh yes,
and or coaching rather,
yes,
and your coach
yeah,
said to you, your
yes,
current status quo
yeah,
emanates from childhood neglect.
yeah,
How
yeah.
did you feel towards that time of your life?
Oh, I'll be really, really open and honest and vulnerable. I felt
Yeah,
as though I
please
was
do.
let down in a very big way. I felt that that's the last thing my parents should have done, even though they didn't agree with each other and they separated. It never should have been the case that we became someone else's responsibility, because that attachment is so important for children to have, especially in the formative years. It leaves an imprint, whether we recognize that or not. It leaves an imprint on the psyche, the way we see the world, the way we see adulthood, and even the way we might even end up parenting our children as well. So I felt really that they let me down. I felt that I was really let down, and I wish that they would have at least had a consultation, because it was like we were never asked. We were never given the choice, the option, or, even if it was the last resort, let's say, it could have been, beta, son, what's happening because of these circumstances? This is going to happen. If you're aware of something, you can prepare for it, but no clue.
Yeah. To be forewarned is forearmed. And you ate, you've got some understanding of this. And saying you're going to Pakistan to spend time with this person, here's a picture of this person. If you were informed, it would have certainly lessened that huge sense of anxiety you had just going over there.
Yeah.
So, gosh, that is, and thank you for sharing that. That's very open and honest of you. And, going through coaching, going through any kind of trauma-focused therapy, which I deliver and I've been the recipient of. I know, especially in our Asian Muslim male community, we don't come forward and we don't undergo therapy. But if you don't undergo therapy, you can't become a therapist yourself. I think you can't become a counselor or a coach if you don't understand your own demons and your own traumas. So actually, we're doing a disservice to the community. There's so many people who could become qualified, therapists, relationship counselors, youth workers, for instance. Your wife Victoria, what you're doing now. I don't think you would have got to that stage with Tifa 2 if you hadn't yourself gone through the journey of introspection and uncovering some of your demons, working on them, and strengthening. How's your marriage now because of what you've learned about yourself and what you've strengthened?
Oh, it's night and day difference. And that's purely because of the realization. So I will mention two things. One's there's a hadith of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and there's also an example of somebody in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and he was an alcoholic as well. And I'll come on to our relationship. So there was a gentleman in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, in Medina, and he's an alcoholic. And a long story short, he's continuously told off, rebuked for his habit. And then what happens one day, someone actually curses him. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, don't curse him, because he loves Allah and he loves the messenger. And do not, turn Satan against your brother. So from what I understand and what I've learned is that someone can have an addiction or be going through something. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person, right? They're addicted. The second statement that Prophet, peace be upon him, said was, he said, seek the cure. Very straight, very explicit, seek the cure. So whatever we're facing, whether it's trauma, whether it's an addiction or anything else that, we need help with, we have to seek the cure. It's actually an injunction within the prophetic tradition.
Yes. Yeah. And even in the Quran, God Almighty says, go to those with knowledge. Go to those with knowledge.
Right,
and, during the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, Chinese medicine was very big. And even now, it's, alternative medicine is very big. And they would seek remedies from there as well. So you seek those with knowledge. And whether that's a counselor, therapist, a medical doctor, going to the doctor for a toothache or earache is fine. But in our community, Taf, we still got this taboo about seeking, not, I wouldn't say cures, but seeking an understanding of childhood trauma, because by all intents and purposes, our parents, the grandparents will say, your child was fine.
Yes.
But actually, sometimes it's not fit for purpose. Neglect is not part of childhood. Disappointment, being rebuked, being compared, being belittled, constant shouting, which we find in a lot of households, unfortunately. Because I had a guest on yesterday, and we talked about, the first generation, they came to survive. The second generation, come to get into good careers, and third generation, like ourselves, we should be thriving now. We've gone beyond the stage of docking the ship. We should be now, pushing the ship out of the water and thriving. And to really thrive, Taf, you know this better than anyone, you really have to understand yourself at the core. Because you are the apex of the Maslow's hierarchy. You can't self-actualize without understanding your core. And in the Quran as well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, talks about insight, tafakkarun, don't you do fikr, don't you look at the signs,
Yeah.
This is so important. So
Yeah.
first marriage was seemingly, it was bound to fail because you were basically a child man, if you know what I mean. You hadn't been through
Yes.
the necessary trauma therapy. So even though you might have been 30, 40 and had kids, etc., you were still, the inner child was longing for parenting.
Yeah.
And that manifested lack of communication.
Yes.
And
Correct.
then now, this marriage now, alhamdulillah, going very well. MashaAllah, you guys are a power couple, the LinkedIn power couple 2022.
Okay.
And so in between that, I understand there was a Taf who came from one marriage to another and was disheveled, out of shape, who was depressed.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that Taf and what changed in your life to go on this self-development journey?
Absolutely. So I got divorced twice. So 16 years first one and 12 years second one. And so my traumas was going along with me in both of those marriages.
Yeah.
So
each time.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we don't heal will always go with us. So what happened was, after my second divorce, I remember actually sleeping on my eldest son's living room sofa. And I was on that sofa for 4 months, and all my clothes were in a sports bag. And I was literally living out of my sports bag for 4 months. And I remember it was a very low period, as if I'm sure you can relate in some ways. And there was one moment which completely changed the trajectory. And it was, I was looking into the mirror, like you do every single day, right? You're doing your hair, you're grooming yourself and trying to look the best for the world. And I just caught a glimpse of my own eyes. And what I mean is, I looked at my eyes, and you usually do, but it's quite superficial. It's like you look and you make sure you're tidy and stuff. But I looked, and I had this conversation in my head, and I said, I recognize you. And believe you me, Dr. Asif, it was the moment I realized actually Taf is still in there. And I said to myself, I'm going to do something about this. And what really changed me at that moment was the thought that, what is it that Taf used to love doing when he was younger?
Yeah.
Because I said to myself, I recognize you.
Yeah.
You used to love sports.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, I used to do Thai boxing. I used to do weight training and stuff, and I was energized. But life happens, right?
It does. It hits you sometimes.
It hits you. So I looked on the websites of different gyms, and I remember, and this is probably the epitome of how I'd neglected myself. So Pure Gym were doing a special for £9.99. And I said to myself, I can't afford that. And I went, you can't afford £10 for yourself, yet you've been spending thousands on everyone else. This isn't right. And that's the moment I realized I'd literally neglected myself for years. And that was a turning point. Tony Robbins says that, it can take a lifetime for people to decide to change, but when they change, it's instant.
Yeah. Yes.
That was the moment.
It's almost like a steamroller. You're like, I wasted so much time. I need to just go now. Yeah.
So I remember, Dr. Asif, I joined the gym, even though it's difficult for me to actually pull out the money. But I fought it. I joined it, and I went back in the gym. I remember kind of struggling on the treadmill, and that was never me before. Struggling, and I went every single day, and then all of a sudden, it changed.
Yeah.
It all changed. And you know what it's like, because once, there's a difference between motivation and inspiration.
Yes.
So motivation, you need to be motivated, and, maybe somebody needs to motivate you. Maybe you need the motivation, but inspiration comes and goes. Yeah, absolutely. And what I learned by inspiration is that inspiration comes from in spirit.
Yes.
When you're in spirit, you don't need any motivation. You're actually in that
Yes.
zone, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw your pictures. 54 now?
I'm 57, mashallah, now.
57, great. I've seen some pull-ups and six-pack, and I'm like, gosh, this guy is the Asian
Mashallah.
Stallone, looking in great shape. But that was what came first, the physical transformation or the mental transformation, or did it come together?
No, it was definitely the mindset first, Asif. Definitely. It was, I had to have the will and the desire to do something. And I remember this. I'd love to share something, not for the sake of saying it's great, but I remember my youngest son. He shared something from Les Brown, and Les Brown's a motivational speaker for those people who don't know. And he said there's an old African proverb that goes like that. If you defeat the enemy within, the enemy outside can do you no harm, right?
Absolutely.
And wow, when I heard that first, I thought, this is the game. This is the game. So my mind shifts. I start to listen to Les Brown, and I'm back in the gym, and I'm going. And last year, Dr. Asif, last year when I went first onto Clubhouse, an audio app, I was actually on the stage with Les Brown, reading back those lines and telling him that he inspired me.
Amazing. Amazing. Come full circle. Life comes full circle.
Full circle.
Amazing.
But you've got to decide.
Sorry, go ahead.
You've got to decide to do it.
Absolutely. And once you decide, they say the universe will conspire in some way. Some people believe in the universe, Mother Nature, law of attraction, and we believe in God.
Yes.
There will, all the powers that be will conspire to make your path easier.
Yes.
No, it's not going to be easy, but it'll be easier once you make that determined decision to fight the inner demons. And them demons, Taf, are so tough sometimes. And you've come on this great journey. What are your tips now for men who are finding it difficult to find their mojo, who are finding it difficult to find that purpose, motivation, that vision and values? What are your top tips that you found from personal development of yourself and from coaching clients? So what are your top tips?
The first thing actually is that, you asked that question before about how is my marriage now? And if we kind of cross-refer back to Maslow's hierarchy, Maslow talks about love and connection being a pillar. After food, shelter and clothing, right? Love and connection is now, imagine having love and connection with someone, right? Or remember someone you've had love and connection with, and then think about not having that. You can see the difference, can't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We must ask ourselves the question, is it worth doing the work to have that? Mm-hmm. So the first tip I'd say to people is look in within yourself, whatever you want. Is it worth it to you?
Yeah.
And this is looking at some home truths. This is really being introspective. This is really trying to ask some honest questions. Are you interested or are you committed? Because if you're interested, you're going to let any excuse, make you fall by.
Yes.
Right? If you're committed, doesn't matter what's going to happen, you're going to keep moving forward. I'm literally interested in doing a marathon, but I'm not committed because I know it's not me. Right?
Yeah.
So make that, whatever you want to do, ask yourself the question, am I interested or committed? And is it worth it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Number two, think about the power of proximity. And this is common, but it's so important. We need to have a mentee. Mm-hmm. We need to have our peers, and we need to have a mentor. Mm-hmm. We have to have all three in our lives at any given time. Everyone needs a mentor, right? Doesn't matter who it is. It's that person who you can say, look, I've got this challenge. What do I do? Give me some advice. They've been there, done it. Mm-hmm. But, each one teach one. So have a mentee to lift somebody up, bring them through as well. And also have time for your peers. You have this, camaraderie and exchange on a very even level. So second thing is think about and follow the power of proximity. And last but not least, I would say the top tip is that no matter what happens, if you've decided this is important for you, keep moving forward, even if the steps are very small. And it goes back to the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, that, Allah loves those deeds which, even though they're small, they're consistent.
Yeah. Frequently.
Frequently. So don't worry about,
Yeah.
climbing a mountain in one day. Just small steps, and keep moving. And with your peers and your mentor and that great company that really creates that synergy, that will inshallah keep you moving forward.
Yeah, no, it's some great advice there, Taf. And I think we're seeing that now. We're seeing the effects of that lack of social connection. And I see it with my patients. Some of them are elderly and, being home alone. And it's not just a physical detriment. Loneliness is killing people. It's literally killing people. And we are social creatures. We hunted in tribes. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we are divided into tribes and nations.
Yes.
That's the beauty of human race. We are tribes and nations, unique to any other species. We have different languages. Monkeys have one language; they don't have dialects, etc. We are, beautiful in that sense. And having that social connection, having that recognition is vital. And some of that I've seen has been lost with the age of digital media, and obviously COVID. So social distancing and isolation regulations, they've stopped some of that. So and hopefully things will improve now. So there's some really golden nuggets for personal development. And I think the thing that's screamed out to me there, on top of social connection, is having a strong why. Your why must be bulletproof. It must be ironclad. Having a strong why, because once your why is strong, nothing can perturb you.
That's right. Yeah,
and
right.
Is that something which you uphold, like your why beyond anything? It has to be stronger than your external environment. So that's when intrinsic motivation comes in. Is that something you teach your clients, or your coach?
Absolutely. I was on the phone about an hour ago with a gentleman, and he was looking for some support for his child. In the end, when the call finished, he realized he needed some support. And I said to him, basically, I said, think about this. You are going to be either the strongest link for your family or the weakest link. And just that line made him just stop in his tracks. And he realized, actually, it's not me continuously looking at other people to fix them. It's about me.
Yeah, I need to be a strong link.
Yeah. And that thing about, when you focus on yourself and how therapy or coaching has helped me, because partly it was therapy, is that my wife and I have such a strong why. Yeah, it's so strong. Our vision is to see a world where all Muslims experience and thrive on love.
Yeah.
And it's bigger than us, right? The vision's bigger than us. And it was the first time. Now, think of the backdrop now. I'm neglected. I feel abandoned, and I've experienced all these things throughout my own marriages. And I came to one point in my marriage with my wife, Victoria, mashallah. One day I was sat with her, and I had this epiphany and this moment, and I said, imagine being loved the way you love.
That's powerful.
Right? Imagine
aligning with the love language.
Well, imagine that, Dr. Asif. Imagine being loved the way you love as a person, the way you express love to people. Imagine being loved that way. And I sat in front of her and I looked at her and I said to her, I've arrived today. And I says, that's what I have found with you. Yeah. And that's the thing. If I didn't do the work, I would never experience that. I wouldn't even know that. I wouldn't even conceive that idea.
Yeah.
So something within me, my mind and my inside had to open up to allow that to even be a possibility.
Absolutely. You reached a higher level of understanding and a higher level of appreciation of love through the tribulations. And you can almost see the tribulations as being necessary for you to self-actualize. Because you
Yes.
would have been a much more mellow, much weaker version of yourself. You would have been a Taf who's happy in a mediocre marriage, who's not really thriving. He's just about surviving. And
Yeah.
life is about thriving. Concept of ihsan in Islam. It's a really
Yes.
good concept. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, become muhsin. Muhsin means in being excellent in whatever you do, whether you're a doctor or a coach or whatever you are, you
Yes.
have to be the best in that field.
Yes.
Ihsan is part of our heritage.
Yes.
Muslims were Renaissance men. The real Renaissance men were the Muslims in Spain, in Baghdad, in Uzbekistan. They excelled in optometry and astronomy and mathematics and architecture. They were the real Muslim, and I think that's really important. Sometimes we externalize our excellence. I've got a promotion at work. I'm a CEO. I'm a partner.
Yeah.
But what about inside the house? Are you excellent? And we know the Prophet ﷺ says the person who is best amongst you is those who are best to their wives. And vice versa, it applies both ways for the wife as well. So many hadiths about the wife, being good to the husband, and she can enter Jannah by whichever door she pleases. So you give us some great gems there, and mashallah, tabarakallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you with great grandchildren. I know you've got grandchildren, but great grandchildren.
Mashallah, yes.
In your marriage. And so what tips would you give for a healthy relationship? And then we mentioned communication. Well, we mentioned lack of communication.
Yes.
So the antithesis of that is good communication. We mentioned understanding of self. What other practical tips would you give our listeners to really cultivating a healthy, faithful relationship between two practicing people?
Two people. Well, I would say always think a win-win. Don't think that I have to win, because John Gottman talks about, and John Gottman, for those who don't know, he's like the love scientist. He had something called the Love Lab, and he studied this scientifically for 40 years, right? And so he had these couples on a journey for 20 odd years, and he's following them. He really said something profound once, and I thought, wow. He said, in some relationships there are unsolvable problems. And couples sometimes spend more time arguing over those unsolvable problems when they should just accept this is unsolvable and get on with getting on, kind of thing, right? So number one is communication, like you say, make it effective, conflict resolution, right? There are skills that we can learn on how to be better, right, at resolving when we get into conflict. And I think the main thing is, and what Gottman again teaches, he said that, look, try to look at each other's love maps. And what he means by that is that learn the stories when Asif was a young kid. What did Asif like? What was he like? What was his friends like? What he liked doing? So this creates like a map of your spouse. And then you have a greater sense of empathy and understanding, and that helps love to grow between two people. So we always have to remain curious. And I always use that word. The minute you become stagnant, right, and think you know your spouse, we know stagnant water smells, right?
Yes.
Exactly. Flowing water is fresh. Yes. To keep your relationship fresh, be curious. Oh, why do you love doing that? I didn't realize that. Tell me some more about this. Oh, right, that's interesting. What do you like doing?
Taf, it's so funny. I literally put that status on my Twitter about 2 hours ago, actually, about stagnation. I'm like, so many people rest on their laurels.
Yes.
They become very smug. They become very smug because success is, I've had the success. I've been married for 5 years. I'm successful by all metrics. I've got this job, whatever. They become so smug that they snugly just blanket their success. Yes. And I'll send you the tweet earlier. It's literally word for word what you just said. Wow. Stagnation is death. Stagnation is death.
Yes.
And death of water. When the water dies, you get algae growing on it and all these things.
Yes.
That's dead water. There's no animals in there. It's dead, literally dead. And so the same as human development, the journey towards self-actualization.
Yes.
You are dead, and you're just getting buried in a few decades. And I put this in the same status. I said, look, some people die, but they're only buried decades later. And you only die when you stop growing. Because opposite of growth is death.
Yes.
When a plant stops growing,
Yes.
you say it's dead. Same as
Yeah.
humans.
It's
And Benjamin Franklin I think
yeah.
said that.
No. Go
No,
ahead.
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
What I was going to say was, it's for me. It's a shame. It's a shame
Mm.
to have 30 or 40-year-old men, right? And I don't mean to say this as an arrogant person who can't keep up with the gym.
Yeah, I know.
And,
Yeah.
and I say that deliberately, just as a wake up call. I mean, and a lot of it, Dr. Asif, is what you will do with your men in terms of mindset. My thing was, when I was in school, we used to do the dips, parallel bar dips, right? And I remember my record was 47 in a minute. And I was really fit when I was young. And I remember for years and years and years, I used to boast about that. Oh, my record was 47. Nah, nah, nah. So now here you have version 2.0 of Taf, right? Living this old, glory. And believe you me, as if you know what I told myself about it, just before the pandemic, I said to myself for the first time, I had this moment again. I thought, why do I keep telling myself 47 was my record? I'm going to break it.
Mhm.
I limited myself.
Yeah, yeah.
And I smashed that record, and I did 61 in a minute.
Amazing, amazing.
Alhamdulillah. And I realized that, look what it is. Sometimes we don't realize how we
Yeah.
talk ourselves out of things.
Yes.
Somebody like yourself, a coach, will see through all the lies and all the pretenses and all the, sweet conversations to know when a person's fooling themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it takes an accountability partner to say, actually, hold on a second. Let me hold up a mirror against you, right? And tell you what's really going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what you mentioned about having a mentor is so important. There's no shame in being someone's mentee. And that person could be younger than you. The mentor could be younger than you. It's about
Yes.
life experience and life journey. They could be far ahead in their life journey of self-actualization than
Yes.
you are. And
Yes.
sometimes we have this internal story, this internal narrative that plays, and it's negative because it's from childhood. And until that trauma is solved, really good episode where Lewis House speaks to Stephen Bartlett, Diary
Right.
of a CEO, and he
Oh,
talks
yeah.
about he only underwent therapy in his 30s, and that allowed him to flourish. Because before that, he jeopardized relationships. Similar to yourself in a way, it wasn't your
Yes.
fault. You just don't know. You kind of don't know what you don't know.
That's right. That's
And
right.
having therapy allows you to unlock that 2.0. And inshallah, with Victoria by your side, you will unlock 3.0. There's no doubt about that. Because
Inshallah,
you've got
yes.
someone there to springboard, a launch pad
Yeah.
to thrive.
Yes. Yes.
The,
Absolutely.
the one thing I wanted to ask you, Tan, is we mentioned having a mentor coach. There's still a taboo in our community. So, what advice would you have for men, particularly men, 30, 40, 50-year-old men who have maybe gone through a divorce or married at the moment, but they want to address their childhood demons?
Yeah.
What advice would you have for these men in reaching out to people like yourself or
Yeah.
other people out there who do counseling or do relationship coaching? What advice would you have?
I'd answer the question first, what you're scared of. Because I think what's linked to it is there's some fear of either something's wrong with me, or I'm not adequate enough, or I'll be blamed. I'm not supposed to be like it's because I'm a man, right? Man up, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Look, the best of creation, as we believe, the Prophet ﷺ, right? He shows us a very beautiful example on him being strong, because he was a strong man. Yet at the same time, he's soft. And the point at which that is demonstrated is that when he receives revelation and he comes back to his
Mhm.
wife Khadija, right? He asks her to cover me, right?
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, he puts his head in her lap, and she has her arms around him. Look at the softness there.
Yeah.
Look at the way
Vulnerability almost.
vulnerability almost. But as his wife, she now reassures him and says, "You're a good man. God would
Mm.
never do this to you. You help the orphans and the widows." Now, when we talk about a relationship, we say this is the perfect example of a man and a woman. A man is able to be strong physically, mentally, spiritually. He's aligned, right? He's either the strongest link or weakest link. We're saying he needs to be the strongest link, yet his heart is soft, he's compassionate. So what are you scared of? Are you scared of being compassionate?
Yeah.
Because that's what you'll get at the end. You'll be like the talk these days is about I won't go in that conversation, but the red pill movement and what a man should and shouldn't be.
Yes.
Right? I can't go into that one. But a man is balanced.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
He's balanced. He has strength, but he doesn't abuse that strength.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah? And he has...
people conflate. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's okay.
No. So before I forget, I was going to say, the reason why people have this reluctance to seek help is because they conflate strength with harshness and softness with weakness.
Correct.
They feel to be strong, you've got harsh, and to be soft, it means you've got to be weak. No. You can be strong and soft, like the greatest of all creation.
So yes, exactly, and that's the most beautiful example for us. The most beautiful example of what a man should be. A man, by his definition, is the attribute of Allah, Jalal. He's strong, right? He has this authority, right? Yeah. But within him, he needs to have Jamil. He needs to have compassion.
Yes.
He needs to have some softness, right? And that's the perfect balance. Where by nature, we're the hunters and gatherers, right? That's within us. Yeah. And so we have to kind of remind ourselves of that strength is there for a reason, but also we need to do lots of work, whether it's mental, emotional, or spiritual work, to make sure we're a balanced individual.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think with Adam, the first prophet, alayhi salam, Allah blew into him. So his soul, so the attributes of Allah are magnified, but they're present in humans. So compassion, mercy, beauty. And even there's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, Allah is beautiful and loves beauty. Jamal, he loves beauty. But he's beautiful and he loves beauty. He is kind and he loves kindness. He is gracious. He is all the attributes, good attributes. We have them in small proportions in ourselves as well, because ultimately we will return to him. So, going on that point you said about being a man, I've seen you, even now you're very well groomed, mashallah, in your 50s. That's one thing I find a lot of men lacking. So either lacking physically or lacking aesthetically, and that is not from our nation. Our nation is the nation of the most handsome man, the most well-groomed man, the man who puts oil on his beard and his hair, and who put gold in his eyes, and the man who smelled nice, the man who was very meticulous with his nails, and did his work on his teeth and had pearly teeth. Yeah. We are a far cry from that. I go to the mosque and men are out of shape. Men are not groomed. Even on Friday prayer, for goodness sake, they're not wearing the best clothes. They're not smelling nice on Friday prayer. Yeah. So what advice would you have, Taf, especially for our men who are kind of 40, 50 now, and they've got this dad bod? What advice would you have for health and fitness and grooming for them?
I would say first and foremost, again, that power of proximity. You have to be surrounded by people who. I remember you speaking actually to your last guest, and you talk about how people will encourage each other, especially if you're speaking about the same topic and you resonate and there's synergy, right? So you must be around people who have these types of conversations. Just like if you're going to a shop of musk, like the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that even if you don't buy any perfume, you'll come out smelling, right? So change your company to where those people do look after themselves. By the way, I get dressed like this even on a Sunday. So this never changes, and it doesn't change because I know for me it's a statement that when I'm in uniform, right? I'm coming here to perform. So it wasn't just for this. It's just I've been here since 7 a.m., dressed like this, because I know that when I dress a certain way, it changes my state. So second thing is that do something to change your state. Whether that means that you have a gym tracksuit on to get your mind ready to go back in the gym, or even for a walk. It doesn't have to be the gym. Go for a walk, right? And last but not least, I think someone like yourself, brother, I'll be really honest, someone like yourself who can really help to untangle those mental crosswires, right? Because the shorting here, there, and everywhere, but that needs to be, cleared. All those self-sabotaging beliefs that, when you're 40, it's over. When you're 50, it's totally over. When you're 60, that's it, you're dead, right?
Yeah.
And just to say, Allah knows when I'm going to pass, but mentally, when I was 54, I said to myself, I'm going to live to 108.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Inshallah, you do. Inshallah, you do.
I said that, I thought, right, I need to look after my health now. Right? So if I think it's going to be 60, 70, right, okay, all right, time's nearly over, so let me just start packing up now, right?
Yeah.
So it's just that you have to go, we can't have a threshold in terms of how high we can go. I think what we do is we have a ceiling, and that ceiling's right down here, and we don't have friends who support that. We don't have people around us who support that, so we just give in.
Yeah. Taf, it's so weird. Literally, subhanAllah, you've read my mind twice now. I did a video about this yesterday. I'm like, in Britain, the bar is so low. The bar for men's physiques is so low. You could be a top 1% man by having visible abs. You could be a top 10% man by just having less than 20% body fat. You could be a top 30% man by having 25% body fat. The bar is so low in the UK and in the West generally. Most men under 40 are out of shape, never mind above 40. Most men under 40 are overweight, and there's a lot, maybe a quarter to 30% are obese. And these are men in the 40s, so it's so low, and particularly in our community, we overindulge. We have bad diets. We're bringing diets of the East into the West. It doesn't work like that. Our weather's different here.
Yeah.
We sat at desks all day. We're not out in the farm, so you can't bring that diet here.
That's right.
And I spoke to an American brother who was in the military, then became a Muslim, and he's into fitness. He's mashallah 50 as well, 50 plus, into fitness, weight training, and we talked about the Prophet alayhi salam, and he wore double armor, 20 kilograms, 10 kilograms each, double armor in his 50s. So Badr and Uhud, when he was in the later years of his life.
Right.
He's a man in his 50s wearing 20 kilograms of armor, going up hills and mountains and valleys. Yes. And ask the average uncle in the masjid to do that. They won't be able to do that.
No, you're right. You're 100%.
Fitness is so important, and it's neglected. And your body has a right over you, because the soul contained in the vessel of the body needs to be nourished. And, Ibn Taymiyyah talks about food being actually a source for the soul. If you eat haram, it actually affect your soul. So there's a link there between what you eat and your spiritual health, and people neglect that.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for that share. I mean, it's a great reminder, honestly. It's a great reminder, mashallah. Great reminder.
No, I just think, we often forget that, and mashallah, you tick a lot of boxes, because alhamdulillah, people can look to you as an inspiration and as an aspiration as well, because you've proven setback is only it's only a block in the way to success. You just got to go over that block. You got to go around it or over it. It's not the road's not closed. It's just a little brick in the road. You go around that brick, and when you go around it, you develop stronger muscles.
No, you do. And Les Brown says, with every setback, there's a comeback, right?
Yes, and the comeback was stronger than the setback, because the setback is there, and the comeback's like a catapult. The catapult forward.
Correct.
And I think that's I read a really good quote from Yasmin Mujahid, and she says, when the diver goes into the deep depths of the ocean, the darkness of the ocean, he picks up pearls, brings them back with him. Right. And these pearls are life experiences, and you wouldn't be doing the work you're doing. Imagine the charity you're doing with your coaching, you and Victoria, the sadaqah that you're doing, which is going to live on way after you're gone. This wouldn't have happened if you were in your box standard Asian marriage, arranged marriage, or like most of us going through. Like, this wouldn't have happened. You have to go through your trauma, and this learning period and this healing period. And to end on that now, healing period. So I wanted to ask you, like, for people going through the journey, so there might be some of our listeners who are actually going through counselling. They've had a few sessions, they've maybe stopped and started because of COVID. What advice, finally, would you give this cohort of people who are going through the healing journey as we speak?
Continue to do it. I would say continue to do it, and make sure. One of the most difficult things for me to do was to journal, because I remember my coach saying that, when you bring together the mind and the pen, and you write something down, you engage the heart. And I remember that very distinctly, and it was amazing because I realized that at the beginning it was difficult for me to actually even put down some words, but as I got used to the idea of journaling, it became easier and easier, and my heart became engaged and things started to come out. So that for me was a release. So continue doing what you're doing and be on that journey. And I would say that, find a modality that works for you, because not everything works with everyone, right? Make sure that, and what I mean is that there are certain ways of working with people. Sometimes some things don't work. And you've got to find the thing that works for you. I mean, when I personally work, with men or with relationships, with men, it's always a case that I ask them to first look at their own levels of happiness, right? The focus has to be, by default, how happy are you with yourself and where you are right now, right? And I remember this statement from Emily Morton, and she says that the tree that denies itself sunshine and water is unable to bear fruits for others.
Very true. You can't serve others. You can't serve others. Empty cup.
Yeah, and we're always saying we want to, help our loved ones and do. But if I'm not giving myself any sunshine and water, then that's the extent to which I can support them. So
Absolutely.
for those guys who are not doing it, don't even think twice, because if you're thinking that it's not a great move, actually you'll be able to do more for the people you love, exponentially more, even more than you even realize right now. And when that starts to happen, you will benefit, you will reap the benefits of that, because your mind will be strong, your physical body will be strong, and your spirit as well, inshallah. They'll all become aligned, and you'll be like, this is me now. And you become more aware of your life, living, and quality of life will improve always.
Yeah, absolutely. Alignment is so important. That spiritual, physical, social, mental kind of alignment. Taf, what a powerful way to end. It's been great having you on. How can people find you? And if they want to reach out to you to have this coaching, and I know you do 15-minute free and no strings attached consultation. So how can people find you and find, if any females out there listening, how can they find Victoria?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we both are certified coaches. We work with the Gottman Institute program. We also do premarital education. So we have a very comprehensive program that we take people through. And those couples that may be struggling with communication, maybe they're arguing all the time or whatever, we work with them as well as a couple. That's why we're unique. So our website is t2.uk. So t2 one word.uk. And on there you'll find all of the details, including our email address as well.
You could tell you're a Yorkshireman. You had to put tea in there, didn't you? It's like tea is our thing in Yorkshire tea, yeah?
Maybe that's it. Yeah, came out. Yeah, absolutely right.
Great stuff. And do you have a personal website? Because I know you've got LinkedIn as well. So it's T2 is where people can find you. That's the main page. Yeah,
we're holding everything there right now. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, great. I hope you can put the link in there somewhere as well, inshallah, eventually. But
So I'll put the link in the description below.
Fantastic.
Great stuff. Taf, absolute pleasure. It's been almost an hour. I felt like it was like a couple of minutes. I could chat to you all night. Lots of insights, lots of wisdom, lots of life experience, and lots of learning from me. Learnings for me. So thank you so much for that. Hope to have you on again. Thanks for listening, guys. And please do follow Taf. I'll send the link down below in the video.